Welcome to Tweener Madness, the high-stakes startup showdown where 8 promising companies go head-to-head for a $25,000 investment prize from the Triangle Tweener Fund. But before the competition kicks off, let's meet the people making the tough calls, the judges. In this special Meet the Judges episode, we're sitting down with the investors and industry leaders who will be asking the hard-hitting questions, evaluating the startups, and ultimately deciding who moves forward in this bracket-style competition. Each round, 3 judges will vote on which startups advance, leading up to the finals in early April, where one company will take home the top prize. From the judges, you'll hear about their backgrounds, what they look for in a winning startup, and maybe even get a little inside scoop on their decision-making process. So, if you're a founder looking for investment, an entrepreneur curious about what investors really want, or just someone who loves a good business battle, you are in the right place. Let's meet the judges. Here's your host, Scot Wingo.
Hey everybody, it is Scot Wingo. Welcome back to another episode of Meet the Selection Committee. Today we have Michael Jones, also known as MJ, as you can see in his little doodad there. And Michael and I have known each other for I don't even know how long at this point. And so I'm going to pretend like I don't know the answers to the questions I'm going to ask him. So we'll get started on that. Michael, thanks for being part of Tweener Madness. We called you up, kind of I lifelined you, and I appreciate you helping out. We had someone that had a conflict and couldn't make it to our first round in the Exceptional 8, and you came in and did an amazing job. And you most importantly you kept Jason Kaplan in check, so that was good.
Yeah, it's always difficult to do, and I love to say that I'm not used to filling in at the last moment for you, but I feel like that's been a big history that we've had together.
Yes, we know who to call if either of us gets in a pickle. Cool. So maybe let's start on the professional side, or I guess let's start on the personal side. So you're not from the Triangle. What brought you to the Triangle, and then kind of tie that into your career and some of the highlights of what you've done?
Sure. So ironically, speaking about how long it's been that we've known each other, I've actually lived more of my life now in North Carolina than anywhere in the United States. So I guess I'm officially a North Carolinian at this point. So
we'll adopt you. Yes.
Yes. So I've been here, I think it's been a little over 27 years at this point. And the way that I got here was a guy that everyone may know named Scot Wingo was recruiting me based on a relationship that I had previously built with Microsoft to come help run both the Microsoft relationship and product management for your first company, Stingray Software. And Scott always has a lot of sort of tricks up his sleeves when he recruits people. And his was, he convinced me to come from Chicago, Illinois, the week of Thanksgiving, where I think when I boarded the plane, it was like negative 10 degrees. And I landed in Raleigh, North Carolina, and it was like 65. And so between meeting you, RS, Dean, and the company, like it made sense. So I've kind of, been here ever since. And then just a little bit about sort of my professional background. So I was at Stingray Software. I was at Auction Rover. I was at Channel Advisor as well. So companies that we all did together. And then I did a 4-year stint being part of the executive management team at eBay in California. And then worked at a company called Retail Me Not out of Austin, Texas. Did a couple stints at some companies in the UK, and then actually through yourself, the folks over at Bull City, as well as sort of previously meeting Dart Davis, I ended up being the CEO of Spoonflower. Was there for 2 years, had asked you to join the board, which you did while I was there. We successfully sold that 2 years into Shutterfly. I stayed on 2 years where year 1, we did an integration with Shutterfly, all the sort of back end of Spoonflower. Then I co-ran the consumer business for a year. And then I kind of thought I was done. And so I took a year off and I thought I was retired. Although I think you and David Spitz and many others probably questioned that. And then I met these 2 brothers, Dan and Michael Swim, who started a company called Candle Signs. And it was 20 years ago. Ironically, I don't know if you remember this, but when they were starting the company, they met us at a Channel Advisor Catalyst conference, and they kind of got sort of inspired by it, decided to do this business. And then I took over for Michael, one of the brothers, in October. And so it's been, about 6 months or so? It's been great. It's been a lot of fun. And I've got a soft spot in my heart for sort of great entrepreneurs that start businesses and sort of need help kind of getting it to the next level. And so, yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Cool. And I do remember them being there. And then when I started the Tweener list, they got on there, I think 2017, 2018. So I've been tracking them for a while. And they're one of those really interesting triangle companies most people aren't aware of. So tell folks, what does Candle Science do?
Yeah, so first of all, you're right. Most people don't know them because they're pretty private individuals as well, not only for themselves, but how they think of the business. They've been just kind of in builder mode, sort of keeping heads down. But essentially, their father was actually a wax salesman back in the day to Yankee Candle. And both of them decided they wanted to get into e-commerce and realized that there was this segment of small businesses and like indie brands in sort of the fragrance, candle, soap, sprays, reed diffuser area that didn't have access to buy from these larger companies because they couldn't buy in all that bulk and quantities. So they essentially started as a distributor where they would buy in bulk and then break it down to be able to actually send out to all of these small businesses. They've gotten so large now, they're basically the largest company in this space that now actually all the fragrance, significant part of the wax, some of the containers and things that we sell are actually exclusive to Candle Science. So they're actually kind of their own brand, at this point as well. And they've done a great job. You and I have talked about this before. Many times when you work at a company that sells an actual physical good, if the product quality is not good or customer service is not good or the operations is not good, it's a pretty big lift. The reality is they are stellar in all of that. Really high quality products. Customer service is like a 97% CSAT. We just got to work a little bit on our sales and marketing and understanding our customers better. But I would happily start with sort of where they've gotten to at this point for sure.
Yeah. It's I did a tour and I was sworn to secrecy, but being to NC State, they're both from State. They both went to State, right?
They're not actually.
Okay. All right. The technical one is Daniel, or do I have that back? I always get this wrong.
So here's what's actually even funnier is that Dan actually has a tech background and Mike has more of a design background. But ironically, running the business, they kind of flopped where Mike actually did all of the back end operations and ran engineering, and then Dan did the other side, which is right. If you know them, it kind of makes sense. Like they're interesting characters for sure.
Yeah, well, because of our background in Channel Advisor, my favorite part of e-commerce is where the rubber hits the road, the warehouse, and in this case, they have a manufacturing piece as well. And without violating any of the NDA stuff, they've done some really clever things of taking automation to next levels, and actually have a cousin in the candle industry, and like this whole fragrance world is really interesting, where you can actually trademark these fragrances or patent them or something, and it's just like really wild to think about this whole other area. Being a software person that's out there, but seeing like really smart people like really bear down on a business and automate it, like a lot of the QA is automated and all kinds of really cool things that they've done there. It's pretty neat to see. Yeah,
it's interesting. I think that was like the first shock for me coming from the software world. When I was at Spoonflower, when you start to see like really what has to happen on the back end from a manufacturing standpoint to make it all work and how you automate it, and then at Shutterfly, I obviously saw it at scale. I mean, Shutterfly is a multi-billion-dollar revenue company, and then to come here, it's really, really impressive to see what they've built, and just kind of the one thing I think about all the time. We have a machine here that we've sort of custom built that does some pretty interesting things with our sort of smaller fragrance bottles that we ship. And it reminds me, this will date me, but I know you'll remember this too. It reminds me of the beginning of Laverne and Shirley, where the bottles are coming by and getting filled, the whole thing. I can't stop thinking about it. Although I learned the hard way that when I bring that up to some of our employees, they have literally no idea what I'm talking about. And
yeah.
So I age myself.
There's a I Love Lucy episode where they have to be on the chocolate factory. Have you seen that one?
Yeah.
Lucy starts eating the chocolates, and then by the end her cheek is like really like there's a couple of those that are hilarious. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we have to introduce the next generation to these things.
Yes, I know.
Cool. Well, in this context, not only are you operator, but you're meeting some entrepreneurs that are pitching and helping us decide who moves forward. What have you done as far as angel investing and investing, in companies and in the area?
Yeah, so I've done a couple things. So I started after the sale of Spoonflower. One of the things I thought a lot about was I really wanted to get sort of more involved in the area. I really have a passion. You and I have actually talked about this for years. Is like, how do we make the Research Triangle Park and this whole area a great place for entrepreneurship, investing, people helping each other? The one thing I realized though was that I wasn't the best at always like sort of giving my time as much as I wanted. And even though I really wanted to, I felt like I was kind of failing meeting folks as much as I wanted. So instead, I did it with dollars to start off with, which I've invested in some local companies. I'm an investor in Bull City Venture Partners, who has been an investor in both Spoonflower and Channelvisor. And then I'm an investor in the Tweener Fund as well. And so number one, I'm doing some through just, capital. I realize that people need capital to run their businesses. And obviously I trust, the folks I've invested in to allocate it appropriately. And then as a result, I've got to meet some companies that I actually think I can really help. I mean, the other thing I've learned is there are some companies out there I'm probably not the best, person for them to talk to, but in some cases there are either, e-commerce or software as a service companies that I really can help. And so, where I can and lean in and help, I do. And then I guess I'm almost on 4 years, which it felt like it was yesterday. I joined the board of a company that used to be called Member Hub, recently renamed GiveBacks. Will Bowen is the CEO. Tweener's invested in that as well. Great group of people there. And it's just really fun to help, a first-time CEO, which I was before, on sort of how to navigate, a rapidly growing business. So that's the stuff I've done to date. And I kind of think once my course is run here at Candle Science, we'll see kind of how long that is. I look forward to kind of leaning in, even more. I've got a son going to Carolina right now, which there's a whole backstory to that, which is always funny since we were such a big state household. But he's kind of leaning into the entrepreneurship world too, to learn more about, what are the things he's truly interested in. And one thing I've been really blown away by is whether it's companies I see being founded here or whether it's like just meeting college students today, I feel like I was nowhere near like where they are today. Like it's pretty impressive, some of the discussions that you have with them. And I'm not even convinced I could kind of keep up with some of the level of classes that they're taking at this point.
Yeah,
it's ironic because you go and speak to them about some of your success. And I feel like I'm not even sure that I would be in this seat. So.
Yeah, having gone, like I do a little round and talk to a lot of the kids, and for 30 years I've been doing this. And 30 years ago, it was like what I'd call, they're fine questions, but they're first order questions like, why did you do this versus a big job? And like, how'd you come up with an idea kind of things. Now you go and it can be like freshmen and sophomores. This isn't MBA classes. And they're like, why do people do safes versus convertible notes? And how do you think about that into how it converts into the next round and all this kind of stuff? And it's just like, holy cow, you guys have, they have so much, not only information in the classroom and the schools are very oriented towards it, but the internet and all the things Y Combinator and all these people pump out there. If you get interested in anything, you can just have infinite digestible content for it. So it's neat to see how fast people are accelerating.
Yeah. One of my funny stories to tell is that the guy that I've been pretty good friends with for a while, he called me one day and said, hey, my son has a business idea. It's around marketplaces, and I kind of thought of you to be able to talk to him. And I'll fully be the first one to admit that when I knew his son, but I knew him when he was like 8, and so I was like, sure, I'm happy to help. And I figured I would jump on the call, and there would be like a lot of pretty basic questions to your point. And there was I think my first 5 pieces of advice I gave him, his response back to me was something like, yep, we've got that done here. I can kind of show you what we've done here. We've prototyped this already. Yes, we've got sort of how myself and the co-founder would work together. And I just kind of felt like all of a sudden the advice I was giving wasn't as valuable as I hoped it would be. But then once we dug into more of what they were trying to do, I was able to help out and introduce to some of the right people. The other thing that's really nice about not only this area, but because I've been in the industry for so long, there's a real desire and hunger for a lot of people to meet some of these younger people that are doing things in marketplaces, like people I know from eBay or Channelvisor that are more than happy to help them out because they're pretty impressed with what folks have done. So that's always good to kind of introduce them to the right people.
Yeah. And then I usually ask folks what their anti-portfolio is and all, but because you're kind of an LP, you know, the decision's kind of out of your hands, so I won't go into that.
Yep.
But you know, you are a very good marketer and a communications person. What are some of the, and you've seen a lot of pitches and done a ton of pitches. What are some of the tips you would give folks as they get into this? You know, and as a reminder, they have 10 minutes to give a pitch, so it's not like an infinite time. What are some either pro or do's and don'ts of MJ's tipping tips?
Yeah, I think the big things are like I'm a big, when I'm listening to someone give an idea of any kind, whether it's a company or anything sort of internally here at Candle Science, I immediately go to this mode of like, how does it help customers, employees, and shareholders, kind of in that order? Like I think about that all the time. And when you're at a point where you're pitching a business or an idea, the people that are like really focused on understanding their total addressable market and then really understanding how it's going to help customers is big. Ones that show up that already say, hey, I have customers and here's kind of what they've been telling me, good, bad, or indifferent, I think is really, impressive and it makes me think that they're taking it really, really seriously. And then another big one is it is inevitably, and I actually went through this, sort of learning experience myself, you're going to get grilled with a lot of different questions, some that may seem repetitive, some you may think you've already said during the presentation, and your kind of immediate reaction is always to be very like defensive. I think the more that you can maybe take a deep breath and think, kind of maybe count to 5 and sort of, really listen to what they're saying and then respond sort of in kind, I think you'll go, a lot further, in those conversations. I remember back at, the Channel Advisor days, I would get so frustrated when people would ask us if Channel Advisor was like open site or how is it different than eBay? And you're just like, geez, I feel like I've said this so many times. But if you just take a step back and kind of really try and address it, I think you'll hone in your pitch like over time. And so I think it's the good way, to think through it. And I think the final thing is always remember that the people that you are pitching, like they're not as, almost 9 out of 10 times, they're not going to know or be as involved or have the same passion you have about what you're doing. So just kind of understand that as you're talking to them. And I think the more patience you can show, I think it shows maturity, which likely helps from an investment standpoint.
Yeah. Good. Any last words of encouragement for the founders that are in this contest?
Yeah, I think it's maybe it's not as much encouragement as it is sort of seize the opportunity. I mean, one of the great things I think about the Tweener Fund and this sort of community that you're building, you are pretty well known in the area for the successes you've had and have been circling quite a few people, both on the investment side and people that are just sort of joining this Tweener community to like really help. And so, I've obviously seen some of the other judges that will be part of it, and they're all very experienced and folks that have sort of been around the block and are like more than happy to help. And so I think the big thing I would say is soak it all in and enjoy it. Like when I first saw about the idea of doing the Tweener Madness, I was like, totally makes sense, like for the area. And so, embrace it. And look, there's going to be, I think it's one winner at the end, which will be great. But I think for everyone that goes through the process, use it as a learning experience. I mean, this will be great. You've got a lot of friendly people in the area that want to see you succeed. And so just kind of remember that no matter what, ends up happening.
Awesome. Well, again, we appreciate you jumping in to help. Good luck with Candle Science. Go. We'll release you to go make some candles or whatever it is you have planned this afternoon. Get your hands in some wax or soy or whatever it is you guys do over there. Yeah, appreciate it and have a good week.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Appreciate it very much. Good luck to everyone.
That's a wrap on this Meet the Judges episode. Now you know the minds behind the decisions, the investors and industry leaders who will be putting these startups to the test. As Tweener Madness kicks off, they'll be asking the tough questions, making the tough calls, and deciding who advances in the bracket, all leading up to the finals in early April. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a single matchup. And if you want to follow along with all things Tweener Madness and the Triangle startup scene, head on over to tweenertimes.com. Also, if you're thinking about launching your own podcast or want to bring professional production to your brand, check out earfluence.com. The competition is about to begin, and we'll see you soon in the next episode.